Thank you. The chair now recognizes Ms. Boebert for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would caution my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to refrain from making fun of the Gulf of America, because next up, may end up be the District of America that we're working on. So just, keep the jokes at bay, and, maybe we'll just stick with the Gulf of America for now. And I do want to just take a personal moment and recognize we have former Congresswoman Yvette Harrell from, hi Yvette. She was a distinct member on this committee, and she's here in the room with us today. So I just wanted to say hello to you, Yvette. Mr. Caravilla, do you know the current gray wolf population total?
Pardon?
Do you know the total population of the gray wolf currently?
No, I don't think anybody knows. There's estimates that range.
Estimates of about 6,000. It's a pretty widely adopted estimate that we have about 6,000 gray wolves in the lower 48. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, about 6,000 to 8,000 is
great. You have a number even higher than me, which is well above like any regional numbers that we were looking at for the Endangered Species Act. So would you consider 6,000 to 8,000 gray wolves being the gray wolf being fully recovered?
I absolutely would not. 6,000 to 8,000 when there were when there were 500,000 before is not enough, and it's really about their ecological function. They're called keystone species because they reduce erosion.
So I think 6,000 to 8,000. Sorry, my time is limited here. I think 6,000 to 8,000 is a good number, especially when we're seeing just the amount of depredation cases taking place, the amount of harm to our pets, to our livestock, to our wildlife. And there's been a lot of attacks on Elon Musk and the federal agencies, and folks no longer being employed because of Doge efforts or whatever that may be by President Trump's requests. Don't you think this is a great time to get the federal government out of the way and return management back to the states and local tribes?
No, I think we need the expertise of these federal biologists.
So the federal government is just the end-all, be-all. We have the federal government, and they're smarter than any state management program, any tribal management program.
The best conservation is with the collaboration between federal and state.
Do these biologists benefit from being in frivolous lawsuits and held up in court rather than being in the lab and creating studies?
Most biologists want to be out in the field.
Yes, they do, but there are frivolous lawsuits that prevent them from that. And I haven't heard any of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle complaining about that aspect of it, just that there may be some reduction in these employees.
Is there a question?
Well, you are saying, it's not really a question, you're saying that they want to be in the field,
Yes,
but there are these frivolous lawsuits that keep them tied up. And
I don't know if they're frivolous or not. So as a federal biologist,
thank you very much for your time. I'm going to move on to Dr. Roberts here. Do you believe that it's time to delist the gray wolf from the Endangered Species Act?
Yes, ma'am, I do. I think the science is clear on that.
And with this frivolous litigation, like the Defenders of Wildlife lawsuit, does that has it distorted the original intent of the Endangered Species Act?
Yes, I think so. The Endangered Species Act is intended to protect animals at immediate risk of extinction. And those lawsuits that you referenced, if you look at those, they're primarily on procedural issues, not the issue of whether the number of animals that are on the landscape.
Yes, yeah. When the ESA is abused, I think that the intent of the act is certainly distorted as well. And Dr. Roberts, how does keeping the wolves listed harm, if it does, the conservation efforts?
Well, I think it is discouraging to states and to individuals to engage in species recovery, to be involved in working with species at peril if there's no end in sight.
And just with our last 30 seconds, Dr. Roberts, how successful have state and tribal management been at helping restore the gray wolf populations to the full recovery levels?
Well, like my colleague mentions, collaboration between the state and federal government is important, and working with the state government was an important aspect that led to the recovery of the gray wolf.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of our witnesses. Madam Chair, I yield.